Entrepreneurship, Wisdom to Wealth. Welcome to Entrepreneurship, Wisdom to Wealth. I'm Regina Davis, your host. Welcome to Season 2. Welcome to Entrepreneurship, Wisdom to Wealth. Our next episode, we're going to have Bruce Michael, owner of Groundwell Community Farm. And this is our guest co-host, Doug Sims. So, Mr. Wilson, can you just explain to us, because we're very interested in farming. So we know that there aren't that many Black farmers in the U.S. in general, probably a handful. How did you get started?
Well, I got started farming by way of growing up on a farm. I grew up on a 160-acre farm, 30 minutes south of Grand Rapids, and it was a beautiful thing. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And so all the things that I learned growing up from a little boy, I just applied that skill level from the things that my mom and dad taught me, on the farm. And then I just transferred it to my adult life, and here I am. I consistently farmed, even as I went to college, and then came back and forth from college to my parents' property, and as I transitioned into my professional career, I would still go back and farm on the property that I grew up on, and kind of help them put in crops and whatnot. So that skill level has stayed with me ever since. And I own a farm in Zeeland, Michigan. A commercial vegetable farm, where we grow 200 different varieties of vegetables, or I should say we did grow that many, but now I've downsized since then over the last few months here. And so, but still actively farming, providing vegetables for the community and for commercial vendors as well. And it's, again, it's hard work. It's arduous at times. It's painstaking, but it's also very rewarding. So, that's kind of how I got my start, and that's where I am right now.
So we have a few questions for you. So I wanted to ask about those. You said the skill sets that you actually had learned. And so what skills were those as they transfer into your adult life for you and your entrepreneurship? And I do want to note that you consider yourself a serial entrepreneur.
That is correct. I am a serial entrepreneur. I delve into all types of lines of work. I run the gamut on things that I've actually done over the years, or been employed with over the years. And it can be a curse at the same time, because, we're only promised 70 years on this earth. And I'm, and you may not get to use all the things you want to do in that whole 70 years, so. But I'm trying real hard. But the skill sets that I learned is really just waking up early in the morning, and being dedicated to the task at hand. And, not only did I work on the farm that I grew up on, I worked at neighbors' farms as well. And, and I remember getting up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and driving to a neighbor's house, when I was 13, 14 years old. And I would milk cows. I would, my first job that I had doing milking cows, I think we were milking between 30 and 60 head at the time. And it wasn't by hand. We had machines that would help us do that work, but still just the preparation of getting started for the day, preparing those cows to be milked, making sure that everything was done efficiently and effectively so that you had good milk going into the tank. And because that milk would eventually end up on the store shelves, and you didn't want it to be contaminated. And then there was some things that you had to prepare to keep it from getting contaminated, as far as the milker falling off the cow's bag and onto the floor. And then hence you would suck up a lot of things that you didn't want suck up in the milk.
Right.
So a lot of care and consideration in that regard, and then I went on and I got a couple years older and I started milking 120 cows for another farmer in the morning. So that would go on for 4 hours. You do that for 4 hours in the morning and 4 hours in the evening. But along with going to school, attending school, and playing sports and things of that nature. So, it taught that skill set kind of was ingrained in you to be a hard worker, and not only to produce well for your family when you were doing work for them, but to produce well for your neighbor as well and whoever employed you at the time. I have had some contact with other kids that I've kind of shared my skill set with, and even here on the farm that I'm on right now, as of last year, I have a nonprofit that piggybacks off of the farm where I invited kids, from 5 to 9 years old, out to the farm, and they would engage with learning how to grow organic vegetables, what it meant to put a seed in the soil and watch it come up, and then transplant that seed to the ground and just watch it grow and produce a fruit, that could be harvested later on. And so they were learning that skill set, and they also learned some other things along the way. I didn't just want it to be about the farm in and of itself, because it takes a multitude of things, I think, to be successful once you grow up and enter into that adult world, and so you need to learn some skill sets as far as survival skills. And I learned that on my own farm as well. I learned how to hunt and fish and provide for myself. So I'm one of those guys that you could put me out in the woods and I could survive for 2 or 3 months or more, just off the land, when the majority of people, especially from the inner city, would never have that opportunity. And so that's primarily who I was teaching, is inner city kids, some of these things. And I would like to go forward doing the same thing and teaching them some of these things: how to set up a tent, how to put together a nice fire so you can stay warm at night if you had to, and then how to cook over a grill, things of that nature, how to shoot a bow and arrow, how to hook up a piece of equipment behind a tractor or any other type of machinery, and do it safely without getting hurt. That's one thing I marvel at, over my years of growing up and being on the farm. None of my brothers and sisters and I have, we never got hurt. And if you know anything about farming, it's one of the most dangerous industries. And there's all types of things that happen on a farm that can injure you or put you out of commission, lay you up, even cause death. And a lot of farmers fall off the back of tractors and get run over by equipment, and they get caught in the machinery and different things like that. And we evaded that. And I just think that there maybe had to be some angels watching over us at all times, because we weren't necessarily trying to be careful about it, because we didn't know any better. We just did it, and we were we were successful in eluding that type of thing. And so but that's something that should be taught, especially if you didn't grow up around it. And I would like to teach that even at my farm, where I could bring a group of kids out, show them how to protect themselves around heavy equipment or equipment in general, while working on it and behind it and around it. And that's a skill set as well that could take them further down the road. And I liken it to like myself and my brothers, we grew up operating equipment. So if you know anything about a heavy equipment operator on a construction site, they do very well. I mean, without a college degree, they're making 80, 90, 100 grand running a big piece of machinery. Now, most kids from the inner city will never have that opportunity to even be introduced to a piece of machinery. So, by me taking baby steps with them and introducing them to a piece of equipment and getting them, interested in it and interested in what that piece of equipment can do. And then they develop a liking to it. And next thing you know, when they turn 18, they can go apply for a construction job somewhere, going down the highway with a roller packer or something, or, a piece of equipment, excavator or something like that. And they're making $80 an hour or $100 an hour. So, that in and of itself can change a child's life. And so, that's been one of my missions amongst a whole lot of different missions that I have going forward. But if one person can learn from that, they were able to learn a lot of things regarding farming in general, and where a lot of these farming mechanisms came from, and there were people that looked like them that they had no idea, like George Washington Carver. I would introduce them to, someone like a George Washington Carver who has so many patents, 300 or more patents on farming and how to farm. And he was a teacher of farming, an expert. And actually he taught white farmers how to farm, and as far as how to, keep their soil regenerated to where they could continue to grow crops and they wouldn't deplete the soil and whatnot. And so I would actually show them who this guy was on a picture, and then I would give some background on him, and then I would give them an example of what he did at the same time. No different than Henry Blair. Henry Blair was a black man who actually invented the corn planter, and he did this back in the mid 1800s. Now, if you ask most people, they wouldn't know who invented this corn planter. And most white farmers have no idea that a black man invented the corn planter that operates behind their piece of equipment year after year after year, putting seed in the ground. And it's just developed and morphed into something bigger and better. But at the same time, that's where the idea came from. And so I just think it's important to educate not just these little young kids of color, but also white kids. And all adults should know these things as well, so they can take hold of it and say, I'm proud of that, and I'm going to teach somebody else that as well.
So what makes things organic?
What makes things organic? Organic is really just a word.
Okay.
I mean, before organic was organic, or even before it was cool, we were growing things organically on our own farm, which simply means that it's chemical free or pesticide free.
Okay.
And so, and it's mostly done by hand. So most of what I do on my farm is all hand work, which is very arduous, very labor intensive. It costs more to operate because it's very laborious. But at the same time, you're getting a better product once it's all said and done. And you have to weigh that out, because a lot of farmers don't necessarily want to go organic for those reasons, because it's a lot of work and it's very intensive, and it takes more money up front to get going. And but at the same time, you can charge a higher premium on it if people want to pay for it, and that's the audience that you have to target. People that actually want to pay for what you can provide to them. And nowadays there are people out there that will pay for it. You have to target the right audience, and then you have to educate the audience that doesn't know, because the audience that doesn't know enough about it, they're gonna nix it, so to speak. And they're gonna say, I don't want to pay that premium for the same food I can get. But they don't understand that they're not getting the same food. I mean, if you're getting food that's been treated, and then you're going to be visiting the doctor's office a lot more.
Yeah.
And it's going to affect your health adversely, and in which you could have been eating healthier and avoided those other bills altogether that you thought you were paying more for food, you know. And so it's you have to really educate yourself on, you know, what's best for you and the human body.
Very similar to when you were speaking about that processed food and unprocessed food. So processed vegetables and unprocessed vegetables, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, you know, they call them, GMOs or genetically modified food. That's what they're doing. They're process. It's being processed in a way to where it can be preserved for shelf life.
Yeah.
And that shelf life, you know, has a very alternative effect on your health, because most food has to travel 1,000 to 1,500 miles, you know, to get to where it's going, you know. And so if you can't necessarily do that with organic food, because it would be it would go to waste before it got to the store shelves. And so they have to inject it with things to keep it preserved, and those things are not good for your body. You know, but they look pretty on the shelf and whatnot. And I grow the food that I grow. Sometimes the plant might have holes in it out in the field and whatnot. And some people might say, well, man, how come your plants have holes in it? And I'll tell them, well, you should be thankful that it has holes in it, because that means that I'm not putting anything on it, you know. Because the insects, you know, they're getting to them and whatnot, and that's just the way it is with organic growing.
Okay. So would you, with the organic foods or just planting in general, would you suggest that communities go ahead and start maybe some gardens of their own to get more people acclimated to growing their own food and being able to sustain themselves throughout the year?
Well, I think it's inherent within us, especially as people of color, that, you know, we come from that background anyway, and so that's something that we should have never been lost on. And so the people who don't have a place to do that, I provided a place. Even at my own farm, I set aside 75 spaces for people to come out and use that space as to grow their own food, and see how productive that food can be on an organic farm, and kind of just learn from that, you know. But again, if transportation is a problem, if time is a problem, if some of those things are kind of standing in your way, you know, if you have any room in your backyard, you can do the same thing. And it doesn't take a whole lot to grow quite a bit, and you can put that food away. And there may come a time where people are going to have to learn how to do this anyway if they don't know how, you know. I mean, times aren't always going to be necessarily the way they are right now. And so it's incumbent upon people to become versed in some of the things that they don't know how to do, or maybe don't want to do. But it's gonna be the thing that provides sustenance and a way of life, you know, down the road, and when hard times fall upon you.
And then we don't have to be faced with the food deserts. Right, we're growing our own stuff. We have more access.
Exactly. It's, it's that old adage, if you want something done, you got to do it yourself. I mean, you can't wait for somebody else to put up a store in your neighborhood to supply you with what you already know that you have to have on a daily basis. It takes a little seed, it takes a little time, it takes a little wherewithal, and then you gotta be willing to nurture it and make sure that it's getting what it needs, like water and different things like that to keep it growing. And so, and all of us have access to those things, if we really desire, and that's why, I am proud to say that, I'm still one of those guys that's out there trying to provide that fundamental thing that we all need on a daily basis. I'm trying to provide that to the community as best I can, and I'm doing it in my own shell. Because as we're declining in vast numbers. Black farmers are just declining in vast numbers, and they have been since the turn of the century, the 1910s and 1920s. Just on record, there was 1 million farmers at that time. Now, keep in mind, that's all they showed on record, and they didn't keep very good records back then, especially for people of color. And so, if they showed 1 million farmers then, there probably was 1.5 million. And today they put us in a category of about 36,000 to 50,000 left. So, I mean, think about those declining numbers and what that means, and you have all these factory farmers that have been taking over the last 20, 30 years, these huge farmers, buying up all the small farms and turning them into factory farms and growing these massive crops and basically, injecting them with GMOs and things of that nature. So, we have to take back what we lost and regain that knowledge so that it's not lost upon our kids as well going forward. And that just means, it really just means getting the information and seeing how you can make it happen. I mean, it is possible. It's hard. I'm not going to say it's not hard, but it is possible to recover from some of that. And we really need to put forth an effort, a fight to do so.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, just myself, just listening to the story about your 75 spaces and learning some things. I'm thinking I might try to come out there and see you and test it out. I might like it, because I'm just thinking about my grandparents and my great-grandparents. They all had gardens in the yard that we used to get food from. So I mean, I guess I would know the basic stuff, but to actually do it would be of interest to me. So if people wanted to find out more about your farm, where is that exactly located, and what kind of process would they need to do to contact you?
Exactly. Thanks for asking. Yeah, they would go to groundswell.farm, and that's a website. They can learn a little bit about the farm there, and they can contact me, at my phone number, 616-581-3030. I prefer text over phone calls, and then I respond. And as far as the spaces are concerned, that cutoff took place back in the beginning of June, so it would be going forward next year. But again, I mean, it's really about building community, because when you're gathering around people of like minds who are doing the same things, something's going to rub off, and you're going to learn something from those people. So you're not going to be necessarily without experience. And then you'll have me there periodically to give some some insight as well on what to do and how to do it. And also you're growing on soil that's considered some of the best soil on earth. It's called a Carlisle muck soil. It's that black soil. If you've seen some certain farms around that have that real heavy, dark black soil, that's Carlisle muck soil, which has so many polyphenols in the soil that, it can produce like crazy, and has a lot of nitrogen and carbon in the soil, and so there's not a lot required, and it also has, kind of like an aquifer underneath the soil, because it was developed from a fluvial type of glaciers that came through the area, many years ago and left these deposits. And so, you can dig down in some places on the soil and hit water within a foot, and so that in and of itself gives you the ability to have your root system take place and be able to or survive when other places that are drier cannot survive, And so I've been able to have some success with that, with not always utilizing or having to utilize a lot of water for irrigation.
Okay.
So you have a mortgage company and a real estate investment company as well. This is where we get into you being a serial entrepreneur. So you want to tell us a little bit about how you got into the mortgage industry and real estate?
Yes. Yeah. Thanks for asking. So yeah, I do have a mortgage company. It's called the Mortgage Cowboy, hence the hat and so on.
Right.
So yeah, I started doing mortgages back in 1996, a long time ago. And, I got my first year, I got really good at it. And, I was one of the top producers, and I decided that, again, focused on entrepreneurship and doing things the way that I want to do them, and doing things, under my own direction. I decided to go on my own a couple years later, and I did. I ran a shop for about 13 years until the market went sideways a little bit, and in 2008, I still was able to survive through 2008 and all the way up to like 2012. And then I backed away from it a little bit because I started doing some heavier deals, some investment banking type deals where I was putting people together on much larger financing transactions within the mining industry and intellectual property industry and things of that nature. And then I matriculated back into the mortgage industry around 2014, 15, and then I started my own company in 2018. And so I've been doing that ever since, and I'm licensed in Colorado and in Michigan as a broker lender. And so that again is another business it's a very intense business, it can be very stressful, high stress, but at the same time it can be rewarding too. So it's done me well, and still I'll probably hang on to it and keep doing it whenever I feel the need. And I probably like my open range contracting as my real estate investing company. And I probably have a lot more, probably a lot more fun doing that, because that's more of the art of the deal, and making that deal happen and transpire. And so, that company is kind of a multifaceted company and delves into construction type projects as well, and actually house flipping and actually investment banking by putting people together to transact some of these larger transactions and things of that nature. So I do find that business really fun.
Okay. So what would you tell people if they're interested in either industry, how to get started, if they were interested? And then it's a two-part question. The other part is what maybe is the state of those industries right now? We understand the state of the industry. We kind of know already about what you were explaining to us about the million farmers some time ago, and now we're at about 36,000 farmers across the country. So what do you see that as? Do you see that people are paying attention to the numbers and that they're trying to do something different to create more Black farmers, or do you just see that maybe not as many people are now interested?
It's going to take, I think it's going to take quite a bit to get people, I should say, really engaged into it. You may get people who have some interest, but that's different than being engaged and actually making a concerted effort to be involved. And so, I would like to establish a large-scale fundraising campaign where I can go out and raise monies that would go towards that particular cause. And if that means, helping people acquire land to do that, because of course you have to have something to grow on. And then you have to educate those people on how to grow. That's going to take $100 million or more to do. And one day I will start that campaign and see where it goes. And as far as the mortgage industry is concerned, there's not a heavy amount of. I think I'm the only Black mortgage broker in Colorado Springs area. So you don't see a lot of people in that industry that look like me as well. And so, getting people interested in something like that is, again, it's an uphill struggle to get there, because there's a lot of very stringent testing that takes place. And they did something a few years ago to weed out all the people who weren't not deserving in that industry. And so, at the height of the meltdown, there was probably 600,000 mortgage brokers or loan officers, I should say, in the industry, and they whittled that down to about 150,000, just to kind of clean up the industry a little bit. And so, but I would advise people who are interested to look at it. It can produce a good living for you if you really want. And the real estate investing is also that's a savvy industry as well. It's something that people can learn and actually make a very good living. Just doing one transaction. I mean, you can do one transaction and make what you make in a year on some jobs. And so I would encourage people to learn about that too. As far as where that industry is going, that industry is always going to be around, because that industry has produced the most millionaires in this country since almost the beginning of industry. Real estate has produced 80% or more of the millionaires in this country, and it probably always will. Because a lot of guys who make their money in other industries actually put that money into real estate, and so it's always going to be that place where you can learn how to turn a dollar into 15 cents, And so as far as where the mortgage industry is going, that's always going to be around too, as long as people need places to live. And right now there's a shortage on inventory. And so if they're building houses, then somebody's going to have to finance them. And so regardless of where interest rates are, people are still going to buy houses. I mean, back in the 80s, interest rates were in the between 8 and 14, 15, I've heard 18%. And so, and people were still buying houses, and people today think that 5.5% is an awful interest rate when it's really not, and so that industry is going to probably stay as strong as it can.
Okay.
Because most people aren't going to be able to come up with $300,000 out of their pocket just to pay for a house, so they got to get financing. And us farmers, I mean, we just got to, we're phasing out of the industry just by age alone. The average age of a farmer is about 57.5 years old. So that farmer is phasing out, and if he doesn't have anybody to take his place, then that could go belly up really fast.
Yeah.
And so we got to get younger people interested in farming and where farming is going and how important it is.
Right. So how can we reach you for the mortgage company? How can our listeners and viewers connect with you for the mortgage?
You can look up themortgagecowboy.com, and the link will pull up for the website, and then you can also contact me at the same number, the 616-581-3030.
Okay.
And then I can show you my platform and how we can get started on getting people into a house or actually refinancing the house that they're already in.
So this is Wisdom to Wealth. So what nugget of wisdom can you give our viewers?
Well, I suppose one nugget would be, depending on what you decide to do as far as a career or even a job, I mean, probably one of the most important things is to know your audience, know who you want to target, and be deliberate about that. Because if you want to go into something and there's no audience for it, then it's not going to survive, and you're going to fail at doing it. And a lot of people who fail don't necessarily want to get back on the horse again.
Yeah.
And so, but again, if you want to be successful, you have to take that failure and actually redouble your efforts and say, I'm gonna use this failure as a stepping stone. No different than Ross Perot or Lee Iacocca and all these other billionaires who have failed multiple times and now look where they are. And then you gotta say, it's never too late to do anything. You can't say, well, hey, my days are past, my days are gone, because that's not true. I mean, when you look at Colonel Sanders, I think he started Kentucky Fried Chicken when he was 67 years old.
Yeah.
You look at Ray Kroc, with McDonald's at 58 years old. So it's never too late. So you got to keep that. That model going as well.
Yeah, we love that. It's never too late. We want to thank you for joining us tonight.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I appreciate being here.
Thank you.